Welcome back. So on the economic front, the good news is that unemployment is going down slightly. The bad news is the cost of living just continues to climb. South Africans are forking out more than 500 Rand more each month for basic food items compared to a year ago. That's according to the latest Household Affordability Index compiled by the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group. To discuss, we're joined by the Program Coordinator, Mervyn Abrahams. Thank you for being with us. Mr. Abrahams, remind us how you gauge the cost of living, because this is across South Africa as well.
So good afternoon, Francis, and good afternoon to all your viewers. Yes, we gathered data on a basket of 44 very basic foods that most working class South Africans would buy at the end of each month. And we gathered this data in some of our biggest cities. So in Johannesburg, Durban, Cape Town, Pietermaritzburg, as well as in the Springbok in the Northern Cape. And for the month of November, the cost of those 44 very basic foods now stand at 4,835 Rand. This is a 48 Rand increase on October last month, and a 563 Rand increase, or a 13.2% increase on the cost of the basket in November last year. So we've seen massive spikes in food prices, and that food price inflation is remaining stubbornly high.
So basically, if you're not earning 500 Rand more, if you haven't increased by that much over the last year, then you can afford less. You can put less food on the table for you and your children.
Exactly, Francis. That's exactly how it works. So inflation eats away at our buying power. But not only can you not buy enough food, or your food purchases are going to be impacted, it is also that electricity prices have increased by between 9 and 10% over the past year. Transport, in terms of taxi fares, have increased roughly around 7%. So with these increases, it leaves less amount of money available to households to purchase food, while at the same time, the prices of the various food items are also increasing. And that is what is causing this immense burden for most South African households at present.
Just looking at November, you say that foods that increased by more than 4% were maize meal, samp, wors, fish, carrots, apples and oranges. So these are really staples, or some basic foods that people need to be healthy. And it's just before Christmas. What's driving those spikes?
So there are a number of factors driving those spikes. Firstly, you know that with some of the vegetable prices that have increased, like onions, etc., it's seasonal. We're getting to the end of our vegetable growing season in South Africa, in various parts of South Africa. So it's natural that there would be increases in some of those vegetables. But at the same time, there are also external factors. So for instance, diesel prices have increased massively over the past year, putting immense pressure in terms of input costs to farmers. But then on the other hand, what is extremely surprising for us is that cake flour has increased by 4% month on month, while globally the price of wheat has come down significantly. So it does also raise the question whether the manufacturers and the producers and the retailers of food are actually passing through some of their lower input costs or some of their savings to the consumer. And so it's a mixed bag picture of increases and decreases, increases on the shop floor, but lower prices globally, etc.
And that's a very good question. We know it's easy to raise prices, but to get them down again across the spectrum is often more difficult. It's interesting that the Durban basket pushed up the national average, and you have these different drivers in different areas, different increases across South Africa. Pretty interesting to me how areas are so different.
So Francis, a major input cost to the food we buy at the shops, in fact, is petrol and transport. In South Africa, we have the situation where we grow our food very far from where we eat it. So, an example, we grow most of our tomatoes in Limpopo, and it is carted or it's transported from Limpopo all the way down to Durban or to Cape Town. Now, that means quite a lot of fuel cost that is actually added to the food, and in particular KZN, largely because of the floods, largely because of damage to stores, but also because of problems on the N3, which is our perennial problem in South Africa. All of those play a role in the actual cost of food when we go into the store.
This is really sad, Mervyn. You say to feed a child a basic nutritious diet, it now costs 850 Rand. That's one child. The child grant is 480 Rand. So I think that really puts it into context, this gap. Is it worse than you thought when you started looking at this? It makes you worry about so many South African children, never mind the adults. And what can be done?
So really, that is one of our major problems in South Africa. It has a major impact on our educational outputs. It has a major impact on our health sector outputs, as well as our economic productivity and growth for the future, is the fact that our children are not accessing sufficient and nutritious food because households are just not able to buy that food. So when we look at the child support grant that is meant to catch those children where parents are unemployed, where there's no one working, then we see that the child support grant is 480 Rand, while it costs close to 800 Rand to feed that child. So it's not surprising, therefore, that we are seeing almost 25% of all our children under the age of 5 are stunted, which means that their ability to absorb all our investment in education already will not work for them, and that they will probably end up in the labor market as laborers at the age of 30, reinforcing the poverty cycles that we are going through in our country.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we're looking at the fact that 7.7 million South Africans are already in those unemployment ranks, many more if you consider discouraged work seekers. Thank you, but how sad. Mervyn Abrahams, Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group Program Coordinator.